My name is Lauren Bennett, and I am 31 years old. Sometimes the people who once felt like family at work are the ones who quietly decide your future no longer fits their plans. I never expected it to happen to me, not after everything I had poured into that small firm just outside Charlotte. If you have ever felt the ground shift under your feet in a meeting while everyone kept smiling, you know the kind of ache I am talking about. Drop a comment below if this hits close to home. I read every single one, and it helps more than you know to know someone else understands. It started on a Tuesday morning in early spring, the kind of day that should have been ordinary. I had dropped Sophie off at daycare with her favorite purple backpack and a kiss on her forehead, promising I would be home in time for dinner and stories. Michael had texted me a heart emoji before his first client call, the small, steady thing that kept me going on busy days. I walked into the renovated house that served as our office, the one with the wide front porch and the creaky stairs that always smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. Harlan Consulting had 12 of us, and for 7 years it had felt like the place I was building my life around. Richard Harlan had known my family since I was in high school. He spoke at my wedding. When Sophie was born, he sent flowers and told me to take all the time I needed. I trusted him the way you trust an uncle who has seen you grow up. That morning, I carried the Thompson campaign files I had been refining for weeks, the ones with the data I had pulled late at night after Sophie fell asleep. I thought we were finally ready to present something strong. The team gathered in the conference room around the long oak table. Richard sat at the head, Derek Lang to his right. Derek had joined 2 years earlier and had a way of repeating other people's ideas just loudly enough to make them sound like his own. I sat 2 seats down, notebook open ready. Richard cleared his throat and smiled, the warm smile he used when he was about to deliver news he knew would sting someone. Derek, that campaign direction you outlined last week is exactly what the Thompson team needs. We are moving the pitch lead to you. Lauren, you have done solid work, but with Sophie still so young, I think it is best if you step back into a support role on this one. We want to keep you from getting overwhelmed. The room went quiet in that particular way rooms do when everyone pretends they did not just hear something unfair. I felt my face grow warm. The Thompson campaign had been my project from the first client call. Derek and I had brainstormed together, but the core strategy, the data segmentation, the creative brief, all of it had started with me. I kept my voice even. Richard, I appreciate the thought, but the foundation of this campaign came from the research I led. Derek helped refine the presentation, yet the strategy is mine. I would like to stay as lead. Derek gave a small laugh, the kind that tried to sound friendly. Lauren, we are a team. I just tightened a few things and added the visuals the client will actually respond to. It is better this way. Richard nodded like the decision had already been made in a conversation I was not invited to. Let us not make this personal. It is about what serves the client and the firm right now. You have been stretched thin, and we all know how important family is. The words landed like a soft punch. He had used Sophie, my 3-year-old daughter, as the reason to sideline me in front of 6 colleagues. I saw Jordan Hale, the colleague who had joined last year, and always stayed late when deadlines hit, look down at his notes. Linda Chen, our office manager, who had been with Richard longer than anyone, shifted in her seat, but said nothing. After the meeting, I stayed behind, trying to catch Richard alone. He was already packing his briefcase. Richard, can we talk for a minute? I need to understand what just happened. He did not look up. We will touch base tomorrow morning, Lauren. Get some rest. You look tired. I walked back to my desk on the 2nd floor, the one by the window that overlooked the small parking lot. My laptop was still open from the night before. I refreshed the shared project folder and felt my stomach drop. The Thompson brief had been edited. My name was still on the document, but whole sections I had written were now attributed to team input led by Derek Lang. The version history showed changes made at 11:30 the previous night after I had gone home to put Sophie to bed. I opened my email and found a chain I had not been copied on until the final version. Derek had sent the revised brief directly to Richard with a note. Cleaned this up so it reads stronger. Lauren's version was a little scattered, probably the mom brain kicking in. We good to move forward, Richard had replied at midnight, perfect. Let us run with this. She will understand once the pressure is off. I sat very still for a long time. My hands were cold. I could hear the others downstairs laughing about something, the normal sound of a Tuesday that no longer felt normal. I forwarded the email chain to my personal account and took screenshots of the version history. Then I created a new folder on my private drive and named it simply Documentation. Jordan found me an hour later in the copy room. He closed the door behind him. Lauren, that meeting was wrong. I was in the brainstorm session when you first laid out the segmentation strategy. Derek took your notes and presented them as his. If you need someone to back you up when you talk to Richard, I will. I managed a small smile, even though my throat felt tight. Thank you, Jordan. I do not know what I am going to do yet. He nodded once, the quiet kind of support that does not ask for anything back. Just know you are not imagining it. That evening, I picked Sophie up from daycare. She ran to me with a drawing of our family, 3 stick figures, and a purple unicorn she had added because she liked the one in her favorite book. I held her a little longer than usual in the car. Michael was already home when we pulled in. He took one look at my face and sent Sophie to her room with a snack so we could talk in the kitchen. I told him everything, my voice cracking on the part about Sophie being used as the excuse. He listened the way he always did, steady and present, then said the words I both needed and feared. You have given that place 7 years. If they are starting to push you out, you do not have to go quietly. After Sophie was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. I opened the new folder and dropped in the screenshots, the email chain, the meeting notes I had typed from memory while it was still fresh. I wrote down exactly what Richard had said about my daughter and the timestamp. Then I sat back and let the tears come, the ones I had held in all day. I was not ready to confront him yet. Something in me remembered the way another woman had left 2 years earlier, after months of being given impossible deadlines, and then told she was not a culture fit. She had a toddler too. I had watched it happen, and told myself it would never be me, because Richard knew my family. That night, I made a different choice. I would not explode. I would not beg. I would document every single thing that followed. Because if there was one thing I had learned in 31 years, it was that the truth needs proof when the people in power decide your story no longer serves them. I was still sitting there when a new email arrived from Richard, sent at 9:47 at night. The subject line was simple. Quick touch base tomorrow. Your role moving forward. I forwarded it to my personal account, added it to the folder, and closed the laptop. My hands were shaking, but my mind felt strangely clear. I did not know how this would end, only that I was no longer willing to let them write the ending for me. The next morning, I arrived at the office 10 minutes early, the USB with my growing folder tucked inside my purse, like a secret I was not ready to share. I had not slept well. Sophie had woken once for water, and I had lain beside her afterward, listening to her steady breathing, while my own thoughts looped through every word Richard had said the day before. Michael had kissed my forehead before he left for his own job and told me to call him after the meeting. I had nodded, but the knot in my chest had not loosened. Richard called me into his office at 9:15. The door clicked shut behind me with a sound that felt final. He did not offer coffee the way he usually did. He sat behind his desk, hands folded, and slid a single sheet of paper across the polished wood. Effective. Immediately, the Thompson account moves fully to Derek. He said, voice calm and measured. Your new focus will be internal support and some of the smaller retainer clients. We have updated your role description to reflect a better balance with your family responsibilities. I picked up the paper. The title had changed from Senior Strategist to Client Support Specialist. The bullet points listed scheduling, note-taking, and assisting senior team members on pitch materials. My name was still there, but the work I had built my reputation on was gone. "Richard," I said, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted. I brought in the Thompson account. "I have been the main point of contact for 2 years. This is not a support role. This is a demotion." He leaned back in his chair. "Lauren, I am trying to help you. You have missed 2 internal deadlines in the last month. Your attention has been divided. Derek has stepped up without complaint. The client noticed the shift in energy during our last call. They asked for him specifically. I felt the floor tilt. I had not missed deadlines. I had worked through 2 late nights after Sophie's bedtime to finish those reports. One of them had been sent at 11:40 at night, with a note that I was still available if anyone had questions. "That is not true," I said quietly. "I can show you the timestamps." Richard's expression did not change. "I am not here to argue facts. I am here to protect the firm and to protect you. You have a little girl at home who needs her mother present. This is not punishment. It is reality." The words landed with the same soft cruelty as the day before. He had used Sophie again this time as both shield and weapon. I stood, because sitting made me feel smaller. "I would like this in writing," I said. "The reasons for the role change." He nodded once, already turning back to his computer. "Linda will send you the updated description by end of day. We can revisit in 90 days if your situation stabilizes." I walked out of his office with the paper shaking in my hand. Jordan was waiting near the stairs. He did not ask what happened. He simply said, "Coffee, my treat." 10 minutes. We sat in the small break room with the door half closed. I told him what Richard had said about missed deadlines. Jordan's face tightened. "I was copied on those reports. You sent them on time. I can forward you the chains if you need them for your records." I thanked him, and the gratitude felt fragile. He was risking something by offering that. I could see it in the way he glanced toward the hallway. That afternoon, Linda Chen appeared at my desk with a manila envelope. She set it down without meeting my eyes. "Updated role description and the signed copy of the conversation notes from this morning," she said quietly. "Richard asked me to make sure you received it." Then even softer, "If you ever need a copy of anything else from the shared drive, let me know before you ask him. Sometimes things disappear from the main folders." She left before I could answer. I opened the envelope later in my car. Inside was the role description and a typed summary of our meeting that made me sound emotional and unreasonable. Richard had already written his version of the story. I drove home with the radio off. Sophie was napping when I arrived, and Michael was on a work call in the spare room. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. The folder on my private drive now had a new subfolder labeled March 2026, Role Change. I dropped in the new document, the email timestamps Jordan had forwarded, and a note I typed with shaking fingers. Richard claimed missed deadlines that did not happen. Linda offered indirect help accessing files. That evening, after Sophie was in bed, I called my college friend Ava Torres. She worked in human resources at a larger firm in Raleigh and had always been the one who told me the truth, even when it was uncomfortable. I had not spoken to her in months, but she answered on the second ring. "Lauren," she said, and I could hear the concern already in her voice. "You sound like you have been crying." I told her everything in one long rush: the meeting, the demotion paper, the way Richard kept bringing up Sophie like it was a professional liability. Ava listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "You need to talk to an employment lawyer," she said finally. "Not because you are definitely suing, but because you need to know what your options are before they write you out completely. I can give you a name." Elena Vargas. She handles these kinds of quiet push-outs in small firms. She will not charge you for the first conversation. I wrote the name down on the back of a grocery receipt. After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room for a long time. Michael came out of his office and found me there. He sat beside me on the couch and took my hand. "You do not have to stay and prove anything to them," he said gently. "We can figure out the money. Sophie and I just need you." I leaned into him and let myself cry for real, the kind of crying that comes from knowing the life you built is being dismantled one polite meeting at a time. "I gave them 7 years," I whispered. "I thought Richard was family." Michael did not answer with platitudes. He just held me tighter. The next week, Richard assigned me 3 new support tasks that each had impossible turnaround times. One of them required pulling data from a system I no longer had full access to. When I asked Derek for the login credentials, he told me with a sympathetic smile that Richard had asked him to handle that part directly to reduce your load. I documented every request, every refusal, every time my name was left off an email chain I had previously led. Jordan kept forwarding me copies of documents where my contributions were quietly removed. Linda Chen left a sticky note on my monitor one morning with the words, "Check the archived client folder from 2024. The original versions are still there." I checked. The versions before Derek's edits still existed in the archive. My name was on every major decision. On a Thursday afternoon, I started feeling sharp pains in my chest and dizziness that would not pass. I told Richard I needed to leave early for a doctor appointment. He signed the time off request without looking up and said, "Take care of yourself, Lauren. Family first." Dr. Anita Shah had been my physician since Sophie was born. She ran tests, asked about stress, and when the numbers came back, she sat down across from me with a folder in her lap. "Your blood pressure is elevated, and your cortisol is through the roof," she said. "This is not sustainable. I can write you a note for medical leave if you need it, but I want to be honest with you. The stress you are describing at work is not just affecting your body, it is changing how you show up at home. Sophie deserves a mother who is not coming apart at the seams." I left her office with a referral for short-term counseling and a note for work. On the way home, I stopped at a copy shop and made duplicates of everything in my folder. Then I called Elena Vargas. Her assistant put me through after I said Ava Torres had referred me. Elena's voice was calm and direct. "Send me what you have. Do not confront anyone else until I have reviewed it. If they are building a paper trail to justify pushing you out, we need to build a stronger one first." That night, I sat at the kitchen table again after everyone was asleep. The folder on my laptop had grown to 23 files. I added the doctor's note and the time-stamped message from Richard about family first. Then I opened a new document and typed the sentence I had been avoiding for days. "I am not going to let them erase me quietly." I saved it, closed the laptop, and went to bed beside my husband. My chest still hurt, but something else had settled underneath the fear. I was no longer waiting for them to decide what my story would be. I was collecting the proof that would let me write the ending myself. 2 days later, Richard sent a company-wide email announcing that Derek Lang had been promoted to senior strategist effective immediately. My name was not mentioned. The email praised Derek's leadership on recent high-profile accounts. I read it at my desk while the rest of the office made congratulatory noises. Jordan caught my eye across the room and gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of his head. Linda Chen walked past my desk and left another sticky note, this one blank, except for a single line of text in her neat handwriting. "The archived versions from before last month are still there if anyone needs them." I folded the note and slipped it into my purse with the others. Then I opened my private folder and created one more subfolder. April 2026. Promotion and exclusion. I was still adding files when my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Sophie drew a picture of you at work today. She made you look tired. We need to talk tonight. I closed the laptop. The ache in my chest had returned sharper this time. I knew the conversation waiting for me at home would not be easy. I also knew I could not stop what I had started. Not yet. The text from Michael stayed on my screen as I sat in the car outside our house. Sophie's drawing was still on the refrigerator when I walked inside a small figure with tired eyes sitting at a desk, while a little girl waited nearby. Michael met me in the kitchen. He did not ask how work had gone. He simply poured 2 glasses of water and waited. "I cannot keep doing this," I said finally. My voice sounded raw even to me. Every day I go in there, I feel smaller. Sophie is starting to notice when I come home quiet. You are starting to notice. He nodded slowly. I have been noticing for weeks, Lauren. I did not want to push you because I know how much that place meant to you. But you are not sleeping. You are not eating. And last night you had another nightmare about Richard standing over your desk. I leaned against the counter. If I leave now, it feels like they win. Michael reached across the space between us and took my hand. If you stay and they break you, they win too. There is a difference between loyalty and letting people use you up. That conversation sat between us for the rest of the evening. We put Sophie to bed together, read her 2 stories instead of 1, and I promised her I would be less tired soon. She touched my face with her small hand and said, "Mommy, you can draw with me tomorrow if you want." I told her I would. The next morning, I emailed Richard and Patricia Lowe in HR that I needed to take the short-term medical leave Dr. Anita Shah had recommended. Richard replied within the hour with a single line, "Understood." "We will discuss coverage for your accounts. No concern. No questions about how I was feeling. Just coverage." While the leave paperwork processed, I requested a complete copy of my personnel file. Linda Chen handled it quietly. She handed me the thick folder 2 days later in the parking lot after work, her voice low. "I made an extra copy for myself before I gave it to you. Some of the notes in there do not match what I remember signing." I took it home and read it at the kitchen table after Sophie was asleep. The early reviews were still there, the ones where Richard had written Lauren continues to exceed expectations and strong client relationships. But newer pages had been added. Performance concerns dated 6 months earlier claimed I had missed key internal deadlines due to family distractions and shown reduced availability for client travel. The dates did not match any emails I had. Someone had rewritten the timeline. My hands shook as I photographed every altered page. Then I called Elena Vargas. She reviewed the file the same day. "This is textbook," she said. "They are building a record to justify the demotion and eventual termination while you are on medical leave. The fact that the notes contradict the actual email timestamps and Linda's recollection is leverage. We can push for a negotiated exit with severance and a neutral reference, or we can go further if you want to expose the pattern." I thought about Michael's face when he said I was not sleeping. I thought about Sophie asking why Mommy looked sad in her drawings. I thought about Richard using my daughter as the reason to take away the work I had built. "I want them to answer for it," I said. "Not in court if we can avoid it. But I want them to know I have the proof." Elena arranged a formal meeting for the following week. Richard, Derek, Patricia Lowe, and Linda Chen were all asked to attend. I brought Jordan Hale as a witness because he had seen enough and was willing to speak. Ava Torres sent me a text the morning of the meeting. "Whatever happens today, you already chose yourself by not letting them finish the story they started writing." The meeting took place in the same conference room where Richard had first sidelined me. Elena sat beside me with a folder of printed evidence. Richard looked surprised when he saw the lawyer. Derek looked nervous. Elena began without small talk. We are here because Ms. Bennett's personnel file contains documented discrepancies that appear designed to justify adverse employment actions while she was managing documented family responsibilities. We have time-stamped emails, archived versions of client work, and statements from colleagues that contradict the narrative in her file. She slid copies across the table. Richard's face changed as he read the altered performance notes. Derek shifted in his seat and would not meet my eyes. Linda Chen spoke next, her voice steady. I have worked here for 11 years. The notes claiming Lauren missed deadlines in January do not match the records I maintained. I signed the original positive reviews. These newer ones were added without my knowledge. Jordan added his piece quietly but clearly. I was in the meetings. The Thompson strategy originated with Lauren. Derek presented it as his own after the fact. Richard tried to recover. This is a misunderstanding. We were trying to support Lauren during a difficult time. Eleanor's voice stayed even. The support included removing her name from accounts she originated, altering her personnel record, and promoting the person who took credit for her work. That is not support. That is a pattern. The room was silent for several long seconds. Patricia Lowe from HR looked at the documents and then at Richard. She did not speak in his defense. Richard stood up. I think we need time to review this internally. Elena closed her folder. You have 48 hours. After that, we will decide next steps, including whether Ms. Bennett returns or we pursue other remedies. He left the room without looking at me. Derek followed. Patricia stayed behind long enough to say she would be in touch. Linda Chen gave me a small nod as she left. 2 days later, Richard announced his resignation. He cited personal reasons in the company email. Derek's promotion was quietly walked back after Mr. Thompson called to ask why the original strategist on his account was no longer involved. The client moved their business elsewhere within a month. The firm offered me a severance package and a neutral reference in exchange for a non-disparagement agreement. Elena advised me I could take it or push harder. I took the package. Not because it felt like victory, but because I was tired of fighting inside a place that had already decided I did not belong. I did not return to the office. Jordan called me the day after the announcement. You did the right thing, he said. A couple of the junior people are already looking for new jobs. The place feels different without you there fighting for the work. Linda Chen sent a card to my home address 2 weeks later. Inside, she had written, Some of us remember who built the good parts. Take care of that little girl. The weeks that followed were harder than I expected. I had the severance, but I also had the quiet knowledge that the professional family I had trusted for 7 years had tried to rewrite me out of its story. Michael and I had difficult conversations about how much of myself I had poured into that job and how little had been protected in return. There were nights when the stress from the confrontation caught up with me, and I had to step away from everything for a few hours. Dr. Anita Shah helped me find a therapist who specialized in workplace trauma. Sophie started asking fewer questions about why Mommy was tired once I was home more consistently. I began taking on freelance strategy work from my dining room table while Sophie napped. It was smaller. It was slower. It was mine. I set strict boundaries about when I answered emails and when I did not. I turned down a potential full-time role at another firm because the culture sounded too familiar. Michael noticed the difference. One evening he said, You are present again, not just in the room, but actually here. The irreversible part was this: I no longer trusted that long-term loyalty at work would be returned. The family feeling Richard had cultivated had been conditional on me never becoming inconvenient. That loss of innocence stayed with me even after the immediate fight was over. I had won enough to walk away with my reputation and some financial breathing room, but I had lost the version of my career that felt safe and familiar. I had also strained my marriage in ways we were still repairing. those were real costs. On a Sunday morning, 3 months after Richard's resignation, I sat on the floor with Sophie while she showed me how to build a block tower that would not fall. Michael was making coffee in the kitchen. My phone buzzed with a message from Ava Torres Hurd through the grapevine that Derek is struggling to keep the remaining clients. Karma moves slow, but it moves. I did not feel triumphant. I felt steady. I had chosen myself when it would have been easier to stay quiet and keep the peace. That choice had cost me a job I once loved and a version of trust I would not get back. It had also given me my evenings with my daughter, clearer conversations with my husband, and the knowledge that I could document the truth even when powerful people tried to bury it. Loyalty is not obligation. The people who treat you like family only when it serves them are not family. I learned that the hard way, and I am still learning how to live with the quieter life on the other side of it. Thank you for listening to my story all the way through. If you have ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping yourself, I hope this reminded you that choosing yourself is allowed even when it hurts. What would you have done in my place? Would you have stayed quiet longer, or would you have started documenting sooner? Let me know in the comments. Your stories help more than you realize.